it worked. All it took was a complete shutdown of the entire computer in the middle of Apple Photos reprocessing all the photos. But that's okay. That's okay. It looked like Apple Photos was content to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and hope that that is what's going on. Now, as always, I'm a little unsure about the delay here. I'm pretty sure that you will be showing up soon enough. There you are. A couple of you. Good afternoon. I am one of repentant state today, and that is because I did not stream for you yesterday, and so I feel kind of bad about that. And as you can tell, I'm not exactly in the same place that I was, although I'm only about 5 feet away. But I think I can hear the difference. I can hear a singularly greater echo in this space than in that one, because that's the closet. And yeah, let's not make any jokes, but I'm in the room at the moment. And the reason for this is because I have set up my workspace so that my laptop, which I'm normally using for this kind of production, is able to just sit right up there at my standing desk. And I can also use a workstation right here to sit via this screen in front of me and continue using the laptop, right? So it's about workflow. And so in there, I need to put that laptop in there as well in order to stream normally. And there is a particular piece that is missing because I only have one of them and I need them in both things. So it ended up being easier to move everything out here and experiment it with it. And all that was going great. And I was even listening to some really awesome music. If you want a good listen, YouTube, okay? Just go into YouTube and Google, I can listen to this all day. Volume 1 and 2. I've had one on replay for a while now. 2 I just discovered today, and it's really good too. But I highly recommend checking that out. So I was listening to the first song in that, and it ready to go right at 450 on the mark. Everything's flying, and then it just doesn't run. I don't even know. But here I am. I'm going to be with you at least an hour this evening. So that means by that clock over there, we're looking at a 6 o'clock end time. We're going to talk about whatever you want to talk about. I will be I will be looking at your comments because I care about you. Believe it or not, that's why I'm doing this. It's a beautiful day outside, as you can tell. It's going to get dark as we go, but I'd rather be out there or puttering away at my nonsense than necessarily sitting down again. But then again, I know you're going to make me want to be here because that's why I'm doing this. It's not for me, but for you. So I want to find out what you want to talk about. How is your week going? How is your world feeling? I can't tell whether it's crazy and we're all dying or whether it's all just normal and everything will be fine soon. I'm pretty sure that's what it is, but every once in a while, there's this little piece of news or this person you talk to, and like suddenly there's this moment of emotional, what on earth, right? And being one who is not spending all my time listening to the nightly news, I'm not even getting like the play-by-play, right? So it all feels pretty normal from where I'm sitting. Other than that, everyone I talk to is in this weird, unnormal state that I also am in, but mine's just not that unnormal because most of what I do as a pastor is going to involve talking to people and trying to help them walk through whatever normal is for them, right? That's a big part of the week for a pastor. So all of that is just still the same job, right? But then everybody else is dealing with not the same job. And that's a fascinating place to be. All that being said, I want to hear about it from you. You know, how's it impacting you, where you are and whatnot. I heard from Wolf Mueller, probably, I think it was last night. And I was so tired. I went to bed last night so early. That's why I did not stream. I was just like, I was going to do a little rest and then get up and stream. And then I got up to brush my teeth and then I did not stream. So that's my apologies, but I didn't even respond to Wolf Mueller. He reached out to me on a Marco Polo chat, and first time we've tried to have contact in a couple of weeks, and I ghosted him, right? Not that I deserve to be able to ghost him, but I did. But I heard from him this morning, and like he was like, "How are you doing?" And so I gave him a little Marco Polo chat back, and but most of it was like, I'm doing fine, but like Texas, are you guys like shooting the virus down there? Like, kapow, we're not worried. You know, I don't know. I haven't heard anything about Texas in my limited news feed. I have not Googled it. So, but if you're from Texas, you want to share what's going on, I'd like to hear that as well. So here we go, right? So this is exactly what I'm looking for. Josh Chambers, everything is fine. Vermont just issued shelter in place though. Okay, so that's what we're dealing with here in Illinois. It's weird, but seems to be really fine. Luther Girl says, everyone at home seems normal, bright, and cheerful, but did get word for the first time now, no more services for a while now. Okay, where are you at? Put where you're at when you leave your comments so we can kind of all compare what's going on in different parts of the country there. Let's see, Luther Girl, Josh Chambers says everything is fine. Oh, I just did that. Okay, right. Gary says USA, Jim, USA, unexplored southern area. Yeah, somewhere deep in the Souths, but then how is it down there? Ardith is saying shelter in place here now. Again, where you at, Ardith? Just for the world, if you care to share. Big regions, right? States, sides of continents, that kind of thing. Shelter in place here now. Not sure what it means for our communion sign-up this week. Waiting to hear. Shelter in place, to my knowledge, has yet to affect the communion sign-up at St. Paul Lutheran Church in Rockford, Illinois. In Illinois, we are to keep it to less than 10 people at a gathering, and you can do that, and we did it last week, and we're going to do it again just in a warmer climate this week. It worked masterfully well. Thank the Lord for the simplicity of Word and Sacrament ministry and all of this, but it does take a little bit of that my elders are doing yeoman's work on this, spending the whole morning changing over the communion wares, washing with Clorox, basically using bleach between each service and running back and forth. But it worked. I wouldn't give it up for the world, I think, because I just don't know how to give that up. But anyway, back to you guys. Omaha has a 10-person limit until after Easter. I don't know how to feel about that one. We're not in those kind of straits here. Ardith from earlier says Greater Charlotte, North Carolina was where the shelter in place from her was. And whatnot. Let's see here. Luther Girl was in Idaho. There are 2 comments from earlier. I don't know how, Bard, to even reckon with that as a pastor. I'm not asking about you. You do whatever your pastor and your elders and your congregation decide to do. I think that's the most important thing at this time. This is not the kind of persecution that will bring about the apocalypse or any such thing if we don't do it right and whatnot. So safety, wisdom, protocol, how you decide to when you're self-managing congregations, which the vast majority of us are, how you make those decisions are things we got to give each other freedom on. So you do what you got to do. If that was one I had to deal with, I don't know what I would do. I don't know how I would feel. I would be so conflicted, so incredibly conflicted, and then conscious bound and duty bound vocationally as well. Here in Illinois, that's not an issue yet, but who knows? I mean, do we all just believe it's going to be normal in 3 weeks? Is that the premise we want to start with, right? Okay, so in 3 weeks' time, 4 weeks' time, 5 weeks' time, give or take, whatever they say in your area, is it all just going to go back to normal? I think it should. I think we should try to make it be so. But do we all just believe that as a premise? Because I don't think everybody does. And so in some ways, in my own head as a pastor now, I'm just trying to brainstorm, like, okay, so what do I have to be prepared for in 3 weeks? What are the possible, what do you go Marvel on this one here? How many possible futures at this point can come between now and 3 weeks from now? Because I'm in an alternate reality from the one I was in 3 weeks ago. Right? And I want to figure out, am I going back to that reality through another wormhole, or do I have to be really thinking about not having Easter in 3 weeks, even though the current shelter in place, I know the light, I'll go pull that in a second. The current shelter in place in Illinois would have us being able to have Good Friday, Monday, Thursday, and Easter, if nothing else comes from that. So I see where you are. I don't have to be there, and my reality, if it's normal, won't be there. So it's a question I don't even need to entertain except for to have mercy upon you. And yet, for some reason, I'm concerned I'm going to have to make a decision about how I am going to engage my congregation and the leadership there on that very issue. And I just don't know I can give up Easter. Not that I care about the date, because clearly it moves around and we're not even really sure sometimes, right? There's a whole fight between East and West on this whole thing. So, okay, fine. But how do I just don't know how, as the Church of Jesus Christ, after 2,000 years, have any government in the world ever say to us, stop getting together, and we all just say, okay. Then they say, it'll just be 3 weeks. It'll just be Easter. So God bless you as you hash this out. Because that one hits me like so deep. And it's just a date. One man considers one day better than another does not, right? This is Hebrews. He's on them about meats and foods and drinks and choices and decisions and opinions. You guys are all fighting over stuff, and what day you receive word and sacrament on And how you remember it is not mandated of God. Easter Sunday as a day of remembrance is not a commandment of the New Testament. To meet on the Lord's Day so as to receive the common union of the words and sacrament of Jesus, well, that one more is, right? That is the New Testament in his blood. So what we're striving to do here is to make it so that you can have that. And I can be for you in this area, if you're a member, because we do practice closed communion. So it's just our members, right? No one's visiting right now, I don't think. We're practicing that here, and I could do that, right? And so I'm so thankful that currently the legal system, that even though it is never mentioned, it is not said in Illinois, did not say, oh, and by the way, religious services are important. Pastors, make sure that you're taking it. Like there was no value given to that. We're in past circumstances. I mean, under wartime law, pastors, clergy are allowed to move about freely because it is, at least of old, recognized that the morale of the people resides heavily within their spirituality. And if you shut that down, everything's going to get worse. And yet there's been no kind of even like, why don't you all you churches, don't meet and pray so that we can, for your country, for your people, pray to your many gods, right? There's no pluralistic even notion of that. It's just religion is just not mentioned in Illinois. You're just not necessary or unnecessary. You just don't exist, right? So we have to wrestle with that reality a little bit, how the culture sees us. And I know I tangented on the thought there a little bit, so trying to get back to the other one, but I'm disappointed in the government of my locale not thinking about us in the midst of all of this at all, because religious people, not just Christians, but religious people have a significant impact on this country and are a big part of this country's history and future. Mosques and temples and all this kind of stuff too. And so just to act like it wasn't even here, it doesn't even exist, I think that's a significantly wicked thing for the government to do, but it doesn't mean that I can't live under it as a Christian, and I can. And so I'm very thankful, this is that other point I left behind, very thankful that in my locale we've been able to maintain word and sacrament in good conscience as our decision, and not feel that we're doing anything wrong. If you ask me to not meet at all on Easter, I'm going to really struggle. Yeah, so my prayers are with you there on that one. I just missed a bunch of you throwing in other stuff. I'll try to throw a bunch in. I got to get this light real fast. Hold on. So Marcia says, my son near Dallas got the order to shelter in place. Sounds like it's pretty much going to be, shelter in place here in Washington, all over the nation, right? Shelter in place. Delaware, shelter in place. No in-person church services for 2 weeks. Thank you, God, for live streaming. And that's the truth. You're going to have an abundance. You have an abundance of material getting put online for you to feast upon over the next couple of weeks from every corner of the Lutheran and Christian world. Austin and surrounding is on shelter in place as of midnight last night. Thankfully, the Austin order still allows for Wolfman to go record our services to stream. And I heard good things about that last week, so I'm sure that will continue. Well, my head elder said to me today in another conversation that I found encouraging in a number of ways. He said, I think, and this is a guy who's going through a significant, let's just say, bureaucratic challenge foisted upon the economy at the moment, right? So he's not saying this from a white tower. He said, this is going to strengthen and bind us all together. And as he said it, I heard him mean everyone. I think he meant our congregation. I think he meant Christianity. I think he meant Lutherans. I think he meant America. Because what's happening right now, America, is we're having to look at our neighbor. We're having to deal with our neighbor. Deal with what it means to be human. So you can imagine away your gender all you want. You can't imagine away the dirty hands that brought you coronavirus. You can't deny its objective reality, right? Sooner or later, all the pie in the sky screaming about postmodern, it doesn't exist, be what you want to be, it runs into the hard, cold reality of the Nature Channel. Oh my, that should have been a tangent. That should have been required viewing for every 12 through 18-year-old male and female growing up, just to watch these animals. Oh my goodness. Meredith and I have attempted to watch some nature stuff with the kids, because there's this really great stuff that's out there now, really high quality documentaries, complete definition. You can just see everything of these animals. It's weird, right? It's all this weird stuff from all over the world. And my kids, they're like, no more. Don't show us. And it's just because it's all so bizarre. And then, when you see the little tiny penguin getting chased by I don't remember if it was a sea lion or if it was I think it was actually a killer whale, and what's going to happen. He's probably going to die. All that kind of stuff. But that's why we should make them watch it. Because the cold, stark reality of this planet. If you're an evolutionist, it is so dry and dead. If you're a Christian, it's just cursed, right? But to be brought back to that then sociologically and emotionally as a group of people, and even as a planet, the boastfulness of the next era. We're either going to end the world in 12 years, or we're going to usher in some panacea of man and machine joining and going to Mars, right? Like, those are the two kind of competing views of the future. And this little panic button here is sort of like the hold on. Let's not forget that, first, space is a cold, dark place where people die in terror. And secondly, Earth is a pretty special little reality, seemingly designed for us to live upon it. Yet something's desperately wrong with it and with us. And the way that we're responding to this internationally and globally and mediologically, it hasn't been good. Can you say it's been good, any of it? So, yeah. Come on, humanity, right? Can we get bound together through this more to understand what it really means? I read a news article I threw it over on the ground over there, James Altucher this afternoon. So I'll just come clean on this one. Altucher, talked me into a permanent subscription to a cryptocurrency periodical monthly about 2.5 years ago. I don't know at all what his business model is, but I know that I now get 2 mailings from him, and in one of them they've asked me to pay for it again, even though I bought a lifetime subscription. And I don't really know what's going on, but I still keep getting them. And for all of me thinking the whole thing's a scam, he continues to give very, very, very accurate information about a panoply of things. And if you find his podcast as well, much of what he brings across in his newsletters, he's also interviewing the guests. So this particular newsletter referenced the audio interview he did with a World Health Organization specialist on virology weeks ago on the coronavirus, which was shared, I believe, in Mad Mondays, by the way, my newsletter. You can sign up for it. I shared that when I saw it weeks ago. He references that, but then the lead article for the new periodical talks about what's really the kind of unseen thing, although it is seen. I think a lot of people see it, but it's the economy and the global economy. And he pointed out one even more major thing than maybe anyone's thought of. I certainly had not, which is that so much of what's going on right now economically in the world, as followed, is gonna connect with China, formerly being the only place we would mass produce certain types of things, and it's all been shut down, like iPhone production and stuff, right? And how do you reboot that? And then do you reboot it again if you're a company where you put all your chips in one bag like that? And that's going to be a pretty massive transitionary economic process that'll affect millions and millions, actually 7 billion lives over the next year, in part exacerbated by the fact that we shut everything down to shelter in place in the U.S. This will be like a jolt to the whole world economic system. And Aldrich's point is that if you do the real numbers on this thing, and it's anything like the other coronaviruses we've dealt with in the past, such as the common cold and SARS, I believe, then the worst damage it could possibly do is so minimal as to be a blip on the radar of an average year's death total in world reality. And the cold reason he's bringing at you, maybe it's a little Thanos-like of him, is that we're going to possibly kill more people by shutting down the world economy than the coronavirus ever could. And that's a fair concern, I would say, don't you think? Something to ponder in the entire thing. Again, as Christians, though, it's like, can we live under that too? Yes, we can. What are we afraid of? So what I want to encourage us always to do is to respect the government, for sure, and do everything you can. And again, as congregations, make decisions, and I'm not going to judge you for them. in the next month or so, though, we got to reorient our worldview a little bit here, don't we? Don't we have to maybe double down on what is written in the scriptures and step back from this box, the glowing magic knowledge box that tells me everything, and that is paid money, not to me. I pay it money, and then it is paid money to make me watch it. The other thing I tried to read this afternoon is an article on Zuckerberg, Facebook, by Wired magazine. So it's from like an issue ago. So I subscribed to it to be able to access stuff for Mad Mondays, and now I actually get the real magazine. It's a pretty amazing magazine. I'd love to have the time to read it. It's so dense. It's like an old school journal. It's on tech. Wired's an incredible magazine. And so anyway, I trying to read this article on Zuckerberg, and oh shoot, now I'm gonna forget where I was going with it. It did connect in some way to the reality, but I will pivot, which people like Zuckerberg know about pivoting, by going to the comments. Zephan says, we're doing online classes at my school these days. Coronavirus got campus shut down. Yeah, the schools were the fastest to go, it seemed, almost everywhere. And that makes sense, because I said this to my wife just 2 days ago. Oh no, it was yesterday. I was like, yeah, because we went to Costco yesterday. I was like, if you think about it, putting all of the people that are the exact same age in the same room together all the time doesn't seem like the most immunologically wise way to go about child rearing. And it is kind of a thing. A lot of stuff we've never thought about. You think about history and what we do and why we do it, and it's because it worked, and through the cases of various rises and falls of civilization, certain practices get entrenched as good ideas. But then a lot of it is sort of random and ad hoc, and other things could have worked. Like, we could have possibly made tires out of different things than we make them out of, even though they would have still had to be round, right? At least so far as I understand it. Maybe there's a way to make square tires that would be more efficient. I don't know. The point is, there's multiple different ways to do something. And so, because of that multiple ability to do something and diverge what we're going in different directions, you can actually lose your thoughts. Which I did right there. Austin is surrounding his shelter in place as of midnight last night. Thankfully, Austin Order still has with me to go on to record our live services. We saw that one early. Bethany, thank you so much for that comment on there. And I'm really glad that all the different congregations are putting out the different levels of production. So whether you're getting more devotional readings, I know some places, again, they're streaming music and service. This is just so amazing. You have such a panoply of stuff out there you can go with. Allison says, it's like what my doctor says, kids are germ factories and petri dishes. That was it. So then we just track through these things that we've received out of history, and maybe they're more complex than we think about. And so who's ever thought about why we raise kids the way we do in schools, other than factory farming kids and factory farming knowledge, which is where it came from and why we do it and why it works. But then, like, immunologically as a species, are we breeding the superbug that's going to kill us all? I think that's a question worth pondering. Yeah. Robert jumps in as a teacher. He says, I'm a teacher, Allison. You'd be horrified as to the absolute lack of basic hygiene. I don't want to even know. I'm not a germaphobe. But I'm going to become one probably after this. I spend way too much time in front of my glowing magic knowledge box. Yes, Zephan, don't we all? The question is, don't let it tell you what to do, what to think, right? How to believe, what to see. And that's where we got to step back right now and start reassessing what are the foundational things I build my worldview on. And your church, if your religion is not the one, then why do you have a religion? Or why don't you get one that lets it be the one? Go get a different religion that lets it be the main thing in your life. Now, Christianity's claim is that it's not just true, but really quite good at the same time. But if you don't think so, if it's not convinced you of that, what are you doing, right? You're what they would call a hypocrite at that point anyway. So why not go find a religion to build your worldview on? And since most of you watching are like, well, I am a Christian, thank God, I'm baptized, yes. Well, then now's a good time to start reassessing the assumptions you have about day-to-day life in the modern and the postmodern age, with Scripture as your foundation, particularly the letters of Paul, Peter as well. First John wouldn't be a bad read right now either. To just say, how do I order the governance of my life in my mind, and what are the words that lead me to make decisions? because words like, of what shall I be afraid? The Lord reigns in Jerusalem. Of what shall I be afraid? What can man do to me? 1,000 may fall at my right side, 10,000 at my right hand. Well, if you believe that, that's going to impact you differently when you face down a pandemic than if you don't believe that. All right. So now is a good time, as I've said before, to really double down on what you believe. Good. Here's an example of hygiene in local schools. Which kind? How do I not go to this school now? Here you go, Pastor. One of my kids was open mouth coughing into a group of students during a fire drill. The sunlight illuminated the spray. That's just awesome. Yeah. So, Luther Girl is thankful for homeschool. Yeah, although homeschools are their own little breeding ground, are they not? Mine certainly has been. Allison says, I'm a teacher too. I teach kindergarten, first grade class. It's a battle getting kids to cover coughs and sneezes. Yeah, it's a battle getting adults to do it. In fact, I've been very, very cautious about this because I have this allergy thing I've been battling. And so when I'm out in public, I'm like, I don't even want to blow my nose because I'm just going to scare people, right? And so I'm being really careful about trying not to show anything. And I was walking out of the grocery store the other day, really in a hurry. My nose, I had something blown up and my nose just started to run. And I sneezed. I didn't even get my hands covered. And I watched it just go flying in the parking lot. And I just put my head down, put my sunglasses on, and walked really fast away from that spot back to my car. I never got out of my car again. My wife was still in the store. I was so ashamed and embarrassed of sneezing like that. So it happens to everybody. This is why good habits, though, good practice. How do you teach that? Where do you teach that? Are schools the places to teach that? Can we rely on schools to teach that? The last 30, 50, 70 years of schooling, we continually are seeing the level of proficiency in our students decline. I don't think anybody who's in education for a long period of time can deny that. What's the cause? Who knows? Is it nutrition? Is it technology? Who knows? It's just not that easy to take the family away from the place where people are trained and then be able to train them in everything and have it all managed from far away, right? This is never going to happen. And that's the system of education we've more or less set up. So I guess I'm turning myself into an argument for small government. But it's just weird to think about. Like you go to the bathroom at Starbucks, right? And clean or dirty, I don't know. It's better than some. I've been to bathrooms on like beaches that are just disgusting. Yeah. I've been in Europe where you throw a coin and there's some guy sitting there and you got to pay him to use that bathroom, but they didn't clean it. What's he doing? He just sits there. Okay. Well, that's fine. That's most of Europe, or much of Europe used to be at least. So what do you make of that? What is hygiene? We've gotten lax, I suppose, but have we? Antibacterial wipes are sold out all over the world to stop a virus right now, or all over the country to try to stop a virus. I guess they got new ones that stop viruses too. That's great. My point is more along the lines of, how do you teach this to a society in a healthy way, especially on a level like this, right? What is cold behavior? If you have a really big, bad, nasty cold with a fever and all sorts of bad stuff, like, what are you supposed to do? Like, where's the class on that? Whose responsibility is that? What's the parents? It's the parents' responsibility. And so, yes, it can't be on the schools to teach all of this stuff, but then if the parents don't know it, how are they going to learn it? And the government's answer is government. My answer is religion. Yeah, religion. Where you would learn etiquette, because how you love your neighbor as yourself is you have a social structure for being kind to each other and respecting each other. And frankly, Western Civ had given us quite a marvelous one, and we just spent the last 30 years tearing it down. So I'm kind of at a loss, society, but I'm still an advocate for believing in something more than the government to save us from any of this, which is part of what engenders my lack of trust in them at the moment, right? And again, I don't know. I'm taking it one day at a time, and I have no intention of what do you call it? Being that's the wrong word. Making a big deal out of something to make it sound like it's a big deal when it won't ever be a big deal. But I think it's time to just be really long-term reassessing of our relationship with the United States of America as 21st century Lutherans. We've been operating in Walther's models, and they're really good. And he's got a lot of Bible in it, and it's true, and it clings to the confessions. But there's some assumptions there about American life that our culture has, that as church, that just maybe this is a good example of what's to come, as opposed of what we can remember from the 50s and 60s. You know what I'm saying? Am I completely off the rocker on this one? All that sun shining on me, I got warm and thought maybe I lost my mind. Hygiene, Jim Anderson says, first article of Apostles' Creed issue. It's just the truth. Virology is about the seen that is actually unseen until it's seen, and then you know, oh dear heavens, what's that thing going to do to me? Mom Monster says, my son's school washes hands upon entering. They also teach sneezing in your elbow. That's good. As a former CNA, okay, as a power cord, I don't need to worry about it. As a former CNA, it's the same practice we practice on every patient. That's great. Washing your hands. So, I mean, I don't know. You would think that if kids go to school and they wash their hands at school all the time, they would learn to wash their hands eventually. Maybe it can be done. I don't know. But I do know, I've heard complaints from my beloved about when you go shopping in the last 2 days, 3 days, and there's this 6-foot rule, and like, there's a lot of people that don't really care. There's whatever, you know? So what do I make of that? Yeah, I don't want to call into account, schooling in general all the way across. I'm just saying there's a lot of assumptions built into regular day school as a form of learning that I think we have more information about now than we used to. And we might want to reconsider those things, especially as the public structures that we have to operate with become less and less reliable. So, homeschool versus public school. I'm not you have to homeschool, you're not a Christian person. But I am public schooling is going to get harder every year by, I don't know what equation to put by it. Is it going to be 1x every year, 2x every year, 3x every 5 years? I don't know. But it's going to get increasingly more difficult to navigate those waters. And private schools are going to fight, but they've been losing the battle to governmental controls for a while. So I just personally don't have a lot of hope in it. They can be tremendous tools, absolutely tremendous tools, when done with conviction. But we've been, in most Missouri Synod situations, running from conviction because we've been convicted that we're going to shut down too soon if we don't change things to make it so we have more money to run the school. And that's been a dominant thing. And you can say it's just my opinion, but I have walked through professionally and undergraduately multiple LCMS schools across the country, and it's been similar in most situations, where the battle to stay open has kind of kept the battle for conviction at bay. Now there are going to be exceptions to that, absolutely, but so for that reason, I just see this as a time to rethink education in general. Is homeschool the only option? No. Is public school the only option? No. Is public school getting harder? Yes. Is homeschool always great? No. What does that mean? How do we teach hygiene, right? And I'm asking this as a parent because I'm trying to teach it to my own family. We're not relying upon other groups to do the educating for us. And we're having to walk them through. I mean, the conversations about the virus at the table the last couple of nights and even last week, I mean, they went into like terror mode a couple of times early on. And why wouldn't they? Everything's being shut down. The president sent a postcard to my house saying, please do these things, right? Like, this is a big deal. And so, to me, homeschool is talking them through how to engage that life with wisdom and understanding. And so reading, writing, arithmetic all become parts of this. So all I'm saying is, you have to don't take my own skepticism with regard to the future of public schools as a condemnation of it. Take it as me opining at the moment and saying that right now is a good time to opine in your own head about reality based on Scripture, and try to draw it back to it. Right? What is our reason for doing these things? And that can apply to everything, including how you teach sanitation to a society, right? And that's kind of the theoretical conversation I was just having, not tied to persons or places. Yeah, I hope that makes sense. So always, Nate Doug, hey, I'm from New Orleans. All churches are closed in the area. Not going to church for the next several weeks really stinks. I think that online services are becoming a Band-Aid solution. Yeah, they are a Band-Aid. They're very much a Band-Aid. Which is part of why I don't want to spend a lot of time building one. Like, if I had the capacity to do one easily, we would just be doing it. But I don't. So we're not going to spend the time fixing that, because that's not going to be a solution long term. It's certainly not going to keep the doors open long term. If they shut down regular assemblies for more than a couple of months, churches are just going to be closed. pastors are going to be getting jobs, uh, as if we don't have them, right? Different jobs. So we have to meet together. Offerings go down when people don't go. No one's gonna, not no one. The amount of how do I say this? In the whole pie of what is given to a congregation, by which they budget and operate, usually barely making it every year, unless they're a big conglomerate one, congregation. I mean, of that pie, only maybe 60 to 80% of it can be counted on to be given no matter what. And the rest is sociologically reliant upon people coming to church. And it might even be worse than that. That's like my stab at it as a guess. We don't talk about these things as pastors, but we all kind of know, I don't know where you would go. The evangelicals are probably studying this stuff left and right, but they have such different practices that we can barely extrapolate our own kind of way to use that knowledge. I mean, who would dig into that? I don't know. But it's really a fact that going online is going to impact the bottom line very quickly for a lot of congregations. And so it's more than just a Band-Aid spiritually, it's a Band-Aid organizationally. And I'm glad it's out there. And if you got that capacity, do it. And if this is the time you've been waiting for to build it for the future, do it. But it's not a long-term solution to church. You don't do church online. It doesn't work. You need the supper. Forgive me for believing that, but that's where I was sitting. Kay says, my ardent hope as a borderline millennial Gen Zer. I hate generation talk. They've been doing it to me my whole life, and it just gets weirder. It's not your fault. You're borderline. No, I don't want to leave you at that one either. You are, we'll just call you Z. These younger generations undergo a positive reshaping of character. This is your hope, right? From all of this, beginning with a revelation of priorities. Yes. But I'm not just going to say younger generation. Look, I'm going to drag this down here over my chest in the hopes it'll block the sun and cool me off. It's not going to happen. I think every generation. You're making my point I've been trying to make over and over again here. It's all of us. This is a moment to undergo a positive reshaping of character, beginning with a reevaluation of priorities. Yep, that's it right there. Bam! I wasn't making no sense. I felt like I went nuts there for a moment. Nope, that's it. You got it. It's a time to strive to positively reshape your own character and to begin with a reevaluation of your priorities. Yep, that's it. Okay, you nailed that one. Allison says, also experiment, put pepper in water. That would be different. Slightly not related, right? When you put soap on your finger and touch the pepper water mix, the pepper scatters. It's a good visual for what soap does to germs on your hands. Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that. Makes me think of an old Crest commercial as a fluoride denier. Shh, don't tell anybody. I have dentists who like me. I don't want to upset them. The idea that the cavity creeps could be stopped by Crest toothpaste was the single best thing that anybody in the history of dentistry did to get me as a young boy to brush my teeth. And after that commercial, if you remember that commercial, after fighting the cavity creeps in that commercial, I brushed diligently my entire life. I still do. Floss like a fiend. Yeah. And so I love the experiment because it's really cool. That's like for like the 17-year-old, I think. But the little kid needs like Dr. Mario, only washing their hands instead of giving it medicine, right? Giving it pills. Like you're putting those bugs out all the time. And then they're gonna be like, oh yeah, I gotta wash my hands, right? That's the way that little tiny mind works at that low level. But this is super cool science experiment. I'm gonna try to remember to say it to my kids. So I'm gonna repeat it to myself here. When you put soap on your finger, put pepper in water. How much pepper? When you put soap on your finger and touch the pepper water mix, soap goes down, pepper scatters. Good visual for what soap does to germs on your hand. What we got to do is make the germs scary for the little boys. So they want to fight them like enemies. And then wash the hands like the men of old did. Right? That kind of thing. And let the little boy brains grow up. And then the girls, I don't know, girls maybe don't have as much of a problem. See, this is another thing about modern education, right? So the classrooms run like everyone's the same. And I'm sorry, the boys and the girls, they act differently. They learn differently. They maybe even speak a different language. Maybe. So Kate says churches will have to crack out the smoke machines and go to bring everyone back. Smoke machines like up in the air, like signals, right? So we can preach through smoke signals far away. I don't know. Doesn't matter how much pepper. Really? Like, don't you have to see it? Like, it's not like just a splash, right? You have to be able to see the pepper. I'm nitpicky like that. So cool experiment though. Absolutely. All right. I didn't pull Jonathan down earlier. Rufus, I heard you say a few times that many if in the Bible can be understood as since, and that sometimes obey should be understood as believe. Can you explain this? Yeah. Although do not consider this a thesis. I would want to go back and read on it a little bit more again. But the word for if in Greek can also be a couple of other meanings, right? It's a conjunctive. It ties together the phrase which follows it or was connected to it with a clause, a sentence coming before it. And the shade of meaning will have a lot to do with the context. And so when translators are taking their Greek text and putting it into English, they will sometimes choose if and sometimes choose since. And they do that, again, based on their understanding of the context combined with a historical reliability of the previous heritage translation. So what's the English they're working with as they develop this one, right? Because no one just goes in cold usually, or if you do, you don't get something very publishable. And so, most things like the ESV stand in a heritage of older translations that form a backbone for it. And so a lot of these decisions with if and since or that kind of thing, because is another way this could be translated, a lot of those decisions rely upon a combination of a new opinion, but much of it is the history, right? Particularly how has this been translated in the past. And so if it's been if for a long time, it's unlikely that you're going to see a new translation take it as since. But I am not convinced that's a good reason not to reread it carefully, especially since we've not had an English translation, to my knowledge, give attention to just this kind of issue. But the EHV, I don't want to speak against, may have done that. That's that new Lutheran translation, which I ran into something, I can't remember now, it was about a week and a half ago, right before everything went nuts, that I was like, oh, I'm not sure I like this anymore. But I can't remember what it was, so don't take that as an entire thing. But, so, when you come to a place in the Bible, when it says if, and that doesn't seem to make any sense from what the rest of the Bible says in a law gospel way, well, then you can feel free to say, well, maybe since makes a whole lot more sense here, or because makes a whole lot more sense here. And amazingly, if you do that, some passages that more or less make your salvation almost seem or feel like they should be hanging on you, hang on Jesus instead. And so that's when I like to do that. When I see that, it's like, oh, look, like this could like reasonably be translated as since. And it would then mean a really good gospel thing as opposed to something that terrifies me, but like without the actual law. Right? So maybe this is in fact the gospel, and I should not make the gospel into a law because that's a terrible law. The gospel's not a good law. It never works out. And so if that makes sense, yeah? And so same issues with obey and believe, although it has a lot more to do with how the English of obey has morphed over time to mean something other than what it originally meant etymologically, which is to listen carefully or to heed the words. Just as the Greek word hupakuo, which usually is translated as obey, but sometimes is trust or believe, or other things as well. That word hupakuo is two words: to be under the words of, or to underhear. Listen and follow. Think of the genie who says, your wish is my command, right? That's sort of the hupakuo thing. I hear and I obey, but it's not obedience, right? It's not tradition, right? It's not that at all, really. It's more about a convicted hearing, right? So whenever you see that obey showing up, sadly, it's not the primary. There's another obey word out there, but this one has just been used so regularly to translate hupakuo by historic translations, and I'm not entirely sure why the original decisions were made that way. But you have a bunch of obeys showing up when it should be simply believes. Obey the gospel of Jesus Christ. It's like, okay. That doesn't fit with all the other phrases that involve the phrase gospel of Jesus Christ. Usually it's believe. Oh, this word can mean that? Yeah, okay. So the Greek word has colors, right? It has edges to it, and they're not the same. So whenever you translate, you're taking a word that has a certain color spectrum of meaning in a language, and then you're trying to put it into another word that has the same single meaning, technically, but will have a different color spectrum. And so I don't know how to give a good example right off the cuff. Comes to mind is there's a scene in the Luther movie, the color one that was a couple years ago, 10 years ago, where he's trying to make a decision between a German word and a Greek word. Maybe it's a Hebrew word. In any case, he says how the Hebrew word, actually, I guess it starts out by he says the German word technically is correct, but it has this cold and boxed in feeling, and that the Hebrew word is like this alive and running free feeling, but it's the same like technical meaning. But then there's another German word that isn't really technically the meaning, but it in fact carries all the connotation. And he's struggling as a translator who was going to be threatened with death for the work, by the way. So don't look down on him too hard. As a translator, he's struggling with how do I make the right decision. And in the end, he makes the decision to give the truer meaning rather than the literal meaning. But that's the problem translation always has, and that's why Lutherans historically have believed it imperative that their pastors be trained to read the scriptures in Greek and Hebrew, and that they be doing so. I'd like to say that's been maintained in the world as we have it today. Our fighting men in that army. I think some have, some haven't. It's a real trial to do so, but it puts us at a disadvantage then, because once you only have the English Bible, you only have the translator's opinion at the end of the day. And often it's very good. Often it's very right. And I call the English Bible the Word of God, and I treat it like it's the Word of God. But I never put it past my knowledge that there are subtle problems with the text. And that's what preaching's for. I believe that this is the way the Lord designed this. He didn't design the church to have a text that we all gathered around and read together and just stared at. He designed us to be around words from the past that are being extrapolated forward and repeated and proclaimed and exhorted and all those things, right? And that text, which does not change, needs to be understood and preached. Otherwise, it is sort of dead to us. We could sit in the corners and read it, but it doesn't say to do that. It says preach it, right? So you get together and you have it preached and you learn from it. That is best done when you have the original text, as opposed to, or when you have the original languages. Getting into textual criticism is a whole other thing. It's best done when you have the best manuscript, to be sure. It's a deep rabbit hole right there. On the other side, do not feel as though an English translation is unsuitable. It is suitable. It's not going to lead you terribly astray, provided especially that you've learned your basics, right? If you know all the basics of karate, well, then you can easily go into a situation where someone says, I'm going to teach it, and you can be like, that's not right. That ain't it. Yeah. And that's kind of what you got to be able to do then. So the catechism as training in theory, discipline and preaching and training in theory presents it so that you can go into that English Bible and you're going to be like, that doesn't smell right. Why does that word say obey the gospel of Jesus Christ? That seems weird. You can ask your pastor, be like, oh yes, this word hupakuo, and for whatever reason it's stuck there, and we should really just see it as believe. So it's not every word in the Bible, like the ifs and the sinces, I don't change a ton of those. But this hupakuo one is it's almost like every time you see the word obey, for Pete's sake, just make it say believe. Even if you want it to be obey, like go do it, believe still works. Like it really functions as a word better. Obey is so narrow in its view, and it's almost a confusing thing unless it's a really clear, like jump, how do you even begin to do it? So good question. Let's see here. I'm so thirsty. Ew. So this is back from teaching kids grossness. I showed them a slow-mo sneeze. Ew, a moldy bread experiment. That's fun. Have them eat it, and then they'll know. Nothing taught me refrigerator chemistry like the time I drank the milk that had been left in an unplugged fridge for a week of Christmas break. That taught me about chemistry in ways I'd never before imagined. UV light with unwashed hands. That one's fun too. They were all like, ew. Oh, good. Yeah, good. You teach. I'd like to believe the system can teach that well. I don't trust the system. Did I already get Nate Dogg in here? Yeah. Band-Aid solution. We got you. All right, we're going to go scroll to the bottom. Bard says, the word was will, as in God's will for you. The word he was struggling to translate could also mean desire. Something else. That's from previous. Kate's, it's why my congregation had such a hard time deciding to suspend services while most other denominations were fine going online. We know that we're losing out when we don't go gather. Yeah, that's the truth, Robert, but I'm going to give you this one too from what I said earlier. Those ones that are just kind of like assuming the money will flow, either they have big bucks in the banks like the Episcopalians, they don't need your offerings. Or they're going to have a hard wake up call when budget time comes in a couple of weeks. And that's going to be, I'm ready for it here. There's just no way. Even with having services, our attendance was half. And that's going to hit us. So you cut it all the way out. Just it's not just about what's right and wrong. It's about the bottom line of the doors in that building. And it's your club building. And if your clubhouse building don't get paid for, they shut it down. So, income is income. But I don't think most people think of it that way. They think that money comes from somewhere else. Because if they're putting $20 in the plate every week, and I mean, it adds up because there's enough of it that it makes sense and it helps, and we need that. But if they're only putting $20 in the plate every week, either they're on a fixed income, and there are those people, but then they're writing a check. If they're putting $20 in the plate every week, they don't know what's going on. They don't know how much it costs. And the more of those that go away over the course of a month or two, can really again impact small congregations particularly. If you're in that 200 range and you drop to 100, if you're in that 30 range and you drop to 5, it might not matter because you're not paying for anything anyway. You certainly don't have a full-time pastor, not without a dual parish, right? So that's a different thing. You can weather this easier, but I'm all worried people are gonna be upset. Get upset. I can't do anything about it anymore. We just gotta live. Luther Girl and Kate Spooner, it's such a hard idea to shake. I always felt mystical to say God is working through these things. Legalistic to assume that God was present at church. Yeah. It is mystical to say God is working through these things. It's a mystery. What you don't want to do is be the kind of mystic who thinks you can understand the mystery, right? You can't see through it, but certainly the Lord's bending all things for the good of his will. It's absolutely mysterious. And yeah, the argument against communion based on legalism is not a new one. Why it can't be, because then you'd have to. I mean, that is a lot of Calvin's argument for. It's like you'd have to pedo commune to commune children otherwise, and all this. And I get it, I think, but at the same time I don't, because frankly, if Jesus says do this and you have to do it, but it's not a law and you can't do it, and here it is, chew, and you chew, and it's like your chewing didn't matter, but I saved you through all that. Like, why am I talking back to Jesus? It's like, amen, Jesus. If that's what you said, that's good. And that was putting the worst construction on the whole thing, right? I get you, Bard. Yeah. So that Will comment was from the Luther movie. Yeah. It was a good moment in English education history. If I was an English teacher, I'd use that to try to teach in class. And then I'd feel like it wasn't working. Because the kids wouldn't care about English, because they don't. Because civilization's falling apart. Yeah, I don't know, maybe. Or they're learning to speak, code instead. I don't know. My kids put on a play today. That was fun. They did not speak in code, but they did an improv comedy skit with a list of jokes in front of them on the table, and they improv'd it as like a dinner conversation, which was pretty good, except for when my son tried to make up a joke that didn't make any sense, and he did this as the second joke. So I was very confused until later when I realized I just missed, I think, one joke, and then couldn't catch up. But anyway, yeah. Why did I share that? I don't know. The weirdness of now. Oh, that's cool. I like that one. I tell my son he's making bacteria explode when he practices hygiene. Sell lysis for the win. That sounds great. Now you need a video of like little bubble starships like shooting up the bacteria cranky like pokey spaceships, so they're all blowing up, and then you're like, washing my hands with Starship Trooper soap. Yeah, right? That's marketing, man. It would work. I promise you. Boys are gonna be boys. Yeah, we're having that conversation. In fact, I gotta get a online elders form of conversation going so we can have this conversation online, because doing business online is not something most congregations are prepared to do, and unless they've already got these tools set up, it's just not that easy. Because how are you gonna even get people to sign up? They don't even know. We barely have a working email list. We don't have a working email list. We have wrong phone numbers in our phone directory that we just did this summer, and we thought we cleaned it all out. It just is. Yeah, it's just nonprofit volunteer organization is all I can say. And so, yeah, I want to get online tools. I've been working on that for 4 to 5 months as a slow process. But I'm not gonna speed that up as the answer. I'm gonna speed up the answer being, we have to adjust to what we're doing now and come back strong and hard on Easter. period. Let the reader understand. I live in Illinois, and what they've told me now is that'll be completely legal. So I'm going to hold them to that word. And we're going to take a hit financially, and then we're going to have different priorities coming back. So I want to use this time to work on the priorities and priority thinking of my leaders and myself, so that when we come back, that hit financially we'll take that won't buckle us, but it'll hurt us. We can just move on and ask how we could better handle these kind of things in the future and put those kind of structures into place, which has kind of been the plan all along here is rebuilding the structure. I mean, the congregation itself, because of its large previous size and its pending collapse, almost collapse that we averted last year by selling the original building and moving to a new site. All of that has to be rebuilt now. So you had this massive conglomerate structure with like more than 55 permanent volunteer positions. We just can't fill it all. So on our agenda has been to talk about that and ask, what's a better way? How can we do this now? How can we do this as a small, thriving congregation with the goal of also building it to being bigger potentially? How can we scale it if we needed to? And this event makes that conversation all the more imperative, because how have we operated through this? Certainly not. I mean, the first thing my church council did is we all decided not to have a meeting. And it's okay, actually. It'll be fine. But that tells you something too, doesn't it? Like because I haven't stopped, and the work for the congregation hasn't stopped. So what does that mean? And having those conversations wherever you are with whoever you're with. And something else I did. I mean, I'm not embarrassed to share this. I have a firearm, and sadly, I don't know how to use the firearm as well as I should. I do know how to use it, and I have used it, and I've been taught how to use it by at least 2 or 3 different people, actually, four have walked me through it. So I did something I hadn't done before. Is I broke it out, and I practiced loading, unloading, to get the feel of it, because I'd never done that before. I'd always had to rethink it when I would pick it up and like, okay, how do I do this again? So I just started practicing it. So now once a day now I'm walking over and I'm running through the whole motion just to know how to do it. It has nothing to do really with shooting the zombies I expect around the hill any moment, and everything to do with just wanting to not be afraid of this tool that I have for self-defense, for neighbors' defense, for being called up to defend the country should I need to, any of those things. So I not only did that, but then I also walked all my children through precisely how to manually do it. All very safe, never with anything in the chamber, anything like that. But before that, it always been like this mystery. Like everyone just knew I had a firearm, and they kind of knew where it was, but it was like, no, don't touch, don't ask. It's just there, and all that. So now it's like, nope, we're gonna start learning how to use this. And part of that is the priorities thing here, not because I think I have to shoot zombies or my neighbors, but I think just the ability, again, to be ready for all situations, to live in America like America was, maybe, should we have to, well, that's the first step, right? And I looked at my son last night, and I just kind of thought for a while, and I was just like, what is his world going to be like when he's 40? Should he live that long? What on earth, or not, is it going to be like? And his little happy little head and his Legos, and it's just, he can't see any of this is going on right now, right? And someday he's going to. And how do I be the father that gives him the mind to do it wisely and faithfully for the good of others, the way I'm trying to do, for him and for you, all that kind of stuff. Oh, I'm gonna get weepy on you. My 4-year-old keeps moving his arms around. That is awesome. He must be watching me. That's what I've been doing a lot of as well. This setup, though, I mean, I don't know. The sound, again, I think there's definitely a little more echo. But we are hoping well, let's just say you may have to have a different background at some point in the future anyway. And so I don't know. Let me know if the sound is bad enough to bother you, because it may end up, I don't know. With a room this big, there's just no way I'm going to be able to soundproof enough of it and all that. So, alrighty then. LCMS has an online giving tool. I think it's the one that is free, right? I think so. There's a way they do it. When we were looking at what it was like, they really weren't going to take anything from you. I don't know what somehow they were going to make money on it. I don't know. But that's cool. I don't know about a kiosk in the narthex. That just seems a little much to me. And even outdated, because I get it that most of our elderly, that would be the next technological step. But if I'm going to make that kind of a move, it's like, nope, we'll just keep letting them give us checks. And we're going to move everyone else who wants to be online to something on your phone, because that's easier by a million years. So, yeah. Not a conversation I want to have yet about at all. Sounds good. Thank you, Neil. That's good. That's our hour this evening, my friends. I made it. I'm here. I'm alive. I hope it was of value to you. I did not take us into Gideon. So look at that. You're going to get extra time because that's the title of the hour. So here we go. Here we go. The midweek text for this week that I will not be preaching on this evening is continuing in the Old Testament lectionary, which as you go from Sunday to Wednesday through Lent, you get a little out of order when it comes to chronology. And that has to do with, I thought I moved this here. Let's try this again. Oh yeah, that's good. That has to do with trying to keep on Sundays the primary story arc going, and then trying not to miss too many of the, what I would call like the really juicy stories that are in, say, Judges and whatnot. And so even though on Sunday we were in Ruth during the time of the Judges, and on this next Sunday, I believe we're going to be moving quite a bit forward. Here we have, to Deborah and Barak, I believe. Here we have for this week, Gideon, right? Deborah and Barak? Hold on. I'm going to double check this. We're not even printing bulletins now. So all of this is sort of like work I did that is fairly useless here. We got Samson next midweek. Lent 5 is Samson's birth. This midweek is Gideon. So where's Deborah and Barak? We did Ruth on Sunday. It was last week. We missed it. Yep. Oh, it's a bummer. It's so good too. That's a good story. All right. All that coming back then. Judges shows us a trajectory of cyclical decline, right? And in each of these cycles, you have similar things. All of it ultimately is not believing God is God and believing we are God and doing what we think is right as a result of that. And every time we do that, every time they did that, things went really poorly, and the promises of God that they did not believe in were no longer there. And this, for them, was quite intense because their promises, unlike our unseen last day promises, were visible. And so they had like superpowers, like their armies couldn't be defeated when they were faithful. But when they decided not to believe for some reason, weird, shows you how crazy we are as humans. How did that conversation go in the boardroom, right? When they decided not to believe anymore, the results were poor. And they would cry out for the Lord then, and this cycle, he'd bring them through a savior, translated usually as judge, a hero, not a king, certainly not a king, not a savior like Jesus per se, but not unlike, more like a warrior superhero kind of guy. And he would send one of these saviors, these champions, maybe another way to say it, and they would be restored, and there might or might not be faithfulness, and then the cycle would repeat again. But every time you see them go lower and lower and lower, and by the time we get to Gideon's story, we've reached a time in Israel where nobody really remembers God at all. It's not Yahweh. I mean, they do, but they don't. They certainly don't have any faith in him so as to understand him. And you see this in a sense, I think, in how Gideon has to be called. The fact that he is called separately, as opposed to just judging Israel. The Lord raised up, the Lord raised up, the Lord raised up. So the Lord doesn't raise up Deborah. The Lord would have raised up maybe Barak. Barak doesn't want to go. Next we get Gideon. And now you have the Lord raising up, but not through a prophet, right? The Lord here now is raising up by a one-on-one intervention, and it doesn't go well. The story of Gideon is not the story of humanity's best foot forward. The people of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord gave them into the hand of Midian 7 years. And the hand of Midian overpowered Israel. And because of Midian, the people of Israel made for themselves the dens that are in the mountains and the caves and the strongholds and the orangutans. Easter egg. And Israel was brought very low because of Midian, and the people of Israel cried out for help. to the Lord. Now, I have an apology. I think this was only public in my Bible study, the last time we had a Bible study class, where I confused Midian with Moab. And I said that Moses married Jethro's daughter, a Moabite, and I should not have said as much as this. This is wrong. Midianite was more correct. So where I taught that, if you were with me in church when I taught that, I was incorrect. But now it's happening. Now it is in fact the people that Moses lived with. It is in fact a very near neighborly people that they share some bloodline and intermarriage with, and in various places. Moses not least of all. And so forth. So, but now they've become their enemy and they've put them down, right? The hand of Midian overpowered Israel. The people cried out. Now, the angel of the Lord came and sat under the terebinth at Ophrah, which belongs to Joash the Abiezrite, while his son Gideon was beating out wheat in the winepress to hide it from the Midianites. Okay, what? Okay, there's a very specific place near a tree where there's a wine press. And things were so bad where this guy, Gideon, who we're being introduced to here, things were so bad where he lived that in order to try to get wheat to make bread out of every day, regularly, he would have to go and take the sheaves and run and hide inside a wine press and do the separating of the wheat from the chaff there in a dark little enclosed chamber so that he would not be seen doing it, so that it would not be taken from him by those who were stronger than him and in the area, the Midianites. That's what was going on. And at that time, the Lord God of Israel, right? The angel of the Lord. I'm not going to go into detail now on why this is Jesus, but it's so obvious. Anyone who says it's not doesn't know their Bible from Sunday, right? They have no clue. This is evidently the pre-incarnate Son of God, and the Bible makes that quite clear. So we just rejoice in that. And there are if you want to go study it, go study it. Google has an answer for you. But Jesus, effectively, the Son of God came, and he sits by this tree where this guy Gideon is doing this. And he says to him, now what a vision, what a moment. This has never happened to me, nor do I think it shall, for I am a coward at the end of the day. But the Lord says to him something pretty sweet. I mean, just imagine your God showing up. You know, pretend you're in some other religion where like God showing up would be like really awesome, like Thor, right? Or like whoever. And they show up and this is what they say to you. Right, this great warrior God who you have always prayed to faithfully through all your sojourns and battles. He says, I am with you, mighty man of valor. Like you're like, well, yes, you are. I guess so. Right, but what does Gideon say? Please, my Lord, if the Lord is with us, why then has all this happened? Right, like, who with worse, coarser language, who on earth are you? What do you think you're talking about? No. God maybe doesn't even exist. Now here's the key here. All this story long, you got to get this. This is Heroes of the Symbol stuff. Gideon is a rank unbeliever. Does he get converted? I don't know. Maybe. Does he stay converted? Sure doesn't sound like it. At this point, he just had the pre-incarnate Son of God show up to tell him that he is Samson and beyond. And he doesn't think God exists. That's the conversation so far. And the Lord turned to him and said, I don't care what you think. I don't care what you think. Go in this might of yours. The promise I made to you, Gideon, that you will be a great warrior, that you don't believe in because you don't believe I exist, it's still a promise. Notice God's countering of Gideon's unbelief with the gospel. This is also just huge for this story. It is just all that happens. Gideon doesn't believe, and God promises more. That's why I love this story. Because it's all gospel. And I'm at least as bad as Gideon. I'm certain of it. I'm sure Gideon had good moments, but he doesn't in this story. And so it's comforting to me to see someone like Gideon be so faithless and have God just say, I am with you. I am with you. Now, where this leads Gideon to, in the end again, does he end up a believer? That's a scary thing there. We'll get there in a moment, I suppose. The Lord gives more promise. That's the point right now, right? The Lord gives promise. I don't believe it. The Lord gives promise. Go, save Israel from the hand of Midian? Do not I send you? Yes, my liege, right? I mean, go. I hope so. And he said to him, whiny, I'm going to go to Taji's station to pick up some power converters. Please, Lord, how can I save Israel? Behold, my clan. Wait. Did I forget that you're God? That might be how. But my clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my father's house. So Manasseh wasn't a big deal. I mean, they're blessed, but they weren't warriors like Ephraim. And so they had a little bit of a, Ephraim's better than us kind of thing going on here. Yeah. And so he's claiming that, you should go talk to Ephraim, and certainly you shouldn't talk to me. And talk to someone else, talk to one of my brothers. I don't believe this. How can I save Israel? Yeah. Maybe because I'm God, What was that from? That's like a South Park thing. Jesus says, maybe because I'm the Son of God. That could be why. Yeah. And the Lord said to him, I will be with you. Now this is here we're talking translation earlier, but this is a vav. This is a W. Okay. In Hebrew, which I'm not a master of at all. Oh, come on now. I'm typing with Dvorak now. The next word is a W in Hebrew. It's called a vav or a wow, depending on which school of Hebrew you are dealing with. And that W serves as a and, or a but, or a so, or a because, or a while, or a, it just keeps going forever. There's so many possible things. It's the only conjunction in the entire language. And so here we are, but I will be with you, the Lord says. Well, you just got to know this. Whenever you see an and or a but, you really are not beholden to the translators. Because, and, I didn't think I'd ever make this argument, but and is a more gospel word than but. And the choice to translate this vav, the choice to translate this as a but, I don't know who made that. I don't know when they made it. Because you can even then go, it's so fluid. So like when Jesus is saying amen, amen, it's not quite the same thing, but you could just as easily in English render it like this. Because the vowel, I can't do it. I'm trying to please both schools. I like vav. That's what I'm going to call it. The vav, the vav is so fluid. And the Hebrew allowed for that, didn't mind, because it didn't have a lot of other ways to conjunct. That was all it did was woo, right? That's it. And it's just conjuncted. But it could carry a lot of different meaning. And when we put in a but, we can add meaning to it. We put in an and, we add meaning to it. So either we should leave them out entirely, or we let it do its full weight and say, now, go in this might of yours. Do not I send you? How, Lord, can I do it? Indeed, I will be with you. And you shall strike the Midianites as one man. Now, that was just a tangent into translation land, but can you see what I did there? This is the value of that education, by the way. It's not something that we can all necessarily have, but if you want to, in this day and age, you can learn biblical Greek or Hebrew as a layperson. You're quite capable of doing it. All the tools are there for you. So Gideon went into his house and prepared a young goat and unleavened cakes from the ephah of flour. The meat he put in the basket, the broth he put on the pot. He brought them in to him under the terebinth tree, presented them an angel of the Lord, and said to him, take the meat, the 11 cakes, put them on this rock, pour broth over them. He did so. That's weird, right? Gideon runs. I didn't tell you. We cut out the part about why, but he runs and he cooks an offering for this guy. Well, he's his God, right? And he's a man, it would seem. And he wants to serve him. So he brings all this out, right? He does all this work for him, which isn't really according to code. Like, this isn't Levitically, right necessarily. But the Lord's like, all right, fine. Yeah, you want to try to worship me in your little pagan way? Here's the deal. Take all that, put it over there, and pour this broth over them. Especially because, you're such a doubter. After you do this, then I will reach out the tip of the staff that's in my hand, like some ancient crazy wizard, and touch the meat with the 11 cakes, and fire springs upon the rock and consumes the meat and the 11 cakes. And then, it wasn't enough. Voodoo hoodoo, he vanishes entirely from Gideon's sight. Now, kapow, if that ain't a film opening, I don't know what is, by the way. Doing that right. That is a thing right there. And then Gideon believes now. Does he? Does he really? Gideon perceived that he was the angel of the Lord. He sees that he's a god of some kind. He finally says, okay. He brought him food because he still didn't believe him. And Gideon said, "Alas, O Lord God, for now I have seen the angel of the Lord face to face," which for some reason he thinks is a bad thing. It's because he doesn't understand the Trinity yet. And it does imply that perhaps he did know something of this Yahweh fellow. Perhaps. Now, in the sermon that I was going to do from this, I would have gone on and finished Gideon's story. I'm not going to tonight. I commend you just to go read it. Go into Judges. Let's see here. What do we got? Judges 6 selected. Go to Judges chapter 7. Pick it up and just read to the end of Gideon. And let this cycle pattern of Judges, of the refrain followed by the downward spiral, be countered in Gideon with God's cycle in Gideon's story of Gideon trying to go lower into unbelief and God always making sure that his promises are greater still. Now, what does this mean for... what does this mean for Gideon himself and whether he'll be with us in paradise? I mean, I said it pretty clearly earlier. I mean, it sure don't look good. It sure don't look good for Gideon. But far be it from me to pass the final judgments. The text is just barely. Now, I'd love to hear someone argue with me about this one, but the text is just barely malleable enough that you can't say for certain. But you can say that about Judas. No, you can't. See, it's pretty well. See, I've heard people argue it too. It's pretty clear. Saul as well, but we'll come to that one soon enough. I hope this has been beneficial to you all. There's a lot of chatting now that I'm talking about judges. Judges, there seems to be a common theme. Israelites always disobey. Why doesn't God appoint another judge at the end? When God doesn't appoint, do they fall away from God? No, they get a king. You get the next story with Samuel. And they're calling out for the wrong kind of king, a Melech, and hopefully I'll get to that in preaching someday. A Melech who is a God king, and God doesn't give him a Melech. He gives him his kind of king, which ends up being Saul. And he's not God's type of king, even though he is, because he doesn't believe. And his whole issue is his unbelief. There's a fascinating struggle with unbelief where he wants to be a believer but won't let himself be, all the way to his death. And then David, who's the real king, not because of how he reigns or how he conquers, but because from his lines will come the Christ, Jesus, who is the real king, right? Who is the God king, better than a Melech and all these things. And that's just the tip of the iceberg of this whole thing. So Thomas says, I've been missing Worldview Everlasting. Thank you for all the new content. Yep, doing my best to still be out here, being whoever I'm going to be as a preacher of the gospel in this day and age. Artist says, thank you so much, Rev Fisk and everyone, as we're getting ready. Everyone liking the stream, that's great as well. If you haven't signed up for the newsletter, of course, you should do that. If you haven't picked up War Without Flesh, Without Flesh, that's the new title, pick that up. If you feel like supporting me on Patreon, you can always do that. And it's a little late for Super Chats in this hour, but those are always nice things too. Paul says, you mentioned that all the tools are present for learning Biblical Greek Hebrew. That sounds super interesting. Tip on where to start. I don't know. Google. That's where I would start. And then your pastor after that with your Google results. Logos software and their Bible app is a great resource for studying it. And my guess is at this point, they've developed tools for self-teaching. So I would in Google, once you start with Logos software, learn and pick one of those languages. Don't try to learn them both at the same time. I recommend, if you're going to do Hebrew, start with the Psalms. If you're going to do Greek, start with John's Gospel. Thank you for enjoying. Thank you for being here. I'm going to say, my friends, Agaresta Tagar Temes. You were bought with a price. Agaresta Tagar Temes. Those who trust in the Lord are like Mount Zion, which cannot be moved. That's you. Don't wallow in the muck. We'll see you tomorrow.